What happened when the most famous man in England was told his love was a crime? Hi there, I'm Chris with a K, and welcome back to This Week in Queer History, where we find hope-filled, inspirational, and strategic moments from queer history that we can use today. This week we're going all the way back to 1895 to a London courtroom where the wittiest man alive at the time was on trial, and he was refusing to apologize for love. Oscar Wilde's trial wasn't just about one playwright. It was a warning shot that sent queer people underground for 70 years. It's also the story about what happens when someone is brave enough to stand up and say, "No, I will not lie."
This week in queer history, stories told with love and glee.
So it's early 1895 in London, and Oscar Wilde was everywhere. Two of his plays, An Ideal Husband and The Importance of Being Earnest, were running simultaneously in the West End. He was charming, quotable, and he was dripping with confidence. He was born in Dublin in 1854 to a surgeon father and a poet mother, but Wilde had turned himself into a walking work of art. At Oxford, he became the poster boy for the aesthetic movement. Beauty above all things. He married Constance Lloyd, yes, a woman, and had two sons. He wrote The Picture of Dorian Gray and conquered London's stages. The man was untouchable. Except he wasn't. Behind the velvet and the wit, Wilde was living a double life. He'd fallen deeply in love with Lord Alfred Douglas, or Bosie, a beautiful, reckless aristocrat with all the emotional stability of a house buyer. Oh, the two of them were intense, indiscreet, and increasingly visible. And this was not the only relationship that Wilde had. He also got together with working class young men, telegraph boys, valets, unemployed clerks, and these relationships, they crossed every class boundary Victorian England held sacred. Now, all of this was happening under the shadow of a terrible law. In 1885, Parliament had passed the Labouchere Amendment, which criminalized gross indecency between men. The language was deliberately vague. No specific act had to be proven. A letter, a glance, a hotel receipt could be enough. Legal experts called it the Blackmailer's Charter, and they were right. Enter the Marquis of Queensberry, Bosie's father. He was volatile, violent, and convinced that Wilde had corrupted his son. On February 18th, 1895, Queensberry left a calling card at Wilde's club that read, "For Oscar Wilde, posing sodomite." It was misspelled, but it was unmistakable. Friends begged Wilde to ignore it. Bosie urged him to sue. What did he do? Wilde sued. And that's when the trapdoor closed. The libel trial opened April 3rd at the Old Bailey. To win, Wilde had to just prove that Queensberry's accusations were false. But Queensberry's lawyer, Edward Carson, he was a brilliant barrister and Wilde's own former classmate from Trinity College, Dublin. Yeah, so Carson had spent months gathering evidence. He called witness after witness, hotel servants, valets, young men who'd received gifts and money from Wilde. Carson read Wilde's love letters to Bosie aloud in court. And then, April 5th, Wilde's legal team withdrew the case. Queensberry was acquitted, and within hours, the Crown issued a warrant for Wilde's arrest. And in this moment, right here, it's really important because here's where Wilde had a choice. His friends, they all begged him to catch the evening boat to France, and he could have been in Paris by the morning, which would have been beyond British law. But instead, he stayed. And I sort of understand this paralysis, what Wilde may have been feeling in this moment, where running away would have felt like lying. When I started coming out, I came out to everyone, friends, parents, siblings, everyone that was really close to me. And I was living my truth out loud and proud. But at the same time, my dad asked me, please don't tell Grandma Norma and Grandpa Ferris, his parents. They were so Mormon and so strict in their beliefs. And my dad thought that if I told them, they would cut me off. So for years, I pretended that I was straight. I'd bring friends home from college and, sometimes it would be a girlfriend and maybe it looked like I was actually dating the girl that I brought home. Once I brought home this friend, Casey, And she was a little bit more on the butch side of things. She had this really amazing, incredible short, a bobbed haircut. So maybe she was a little bit more all the way on the butch side. But after she left, my grandparents asked my dad, "Oh, is that his new girlfriend?" And when he told me that, we both just burst out laughing because it was just so clear that she was not. She was definitely gay, a lesbian. And it was funny, but also it made me a little sad because it also meant that my grandparents didn't know who I truly was. And Wilde wanted to be known too. He didn't want to run because running meant agreeing that the love that he had was something to hide. So he was arrested on April 6th at the Cadogan Hotel. The first criminal trial began April 26th. That's 131 years ago. And Wilde was charged alongside Alfred Taylor, who had introduced him to many of the young men. The prosecution had a parade of witnesses. Charles Parker, Alfred Wood, Sidney Mavor. They were working class men who had been granted immunity in exchange for their testimony. They described gifts, hotel rooms, intimate encounters. And then Wilde took the stand. When he was asked about the line from Bosie's poem, "The love that dare not speak its name," Wilde delivered what might be the bravest speech ever given in the courtroom. "It is beautiful, it is fine, it is the noblest form of affection. There is nothing unnatural about it. The world does not understand. The world mocks at it and sometimes puts one in the pillory for it." The courtroom erupted in applause, but applause doesn't sway juries. The first trial ended in a hung jury. The second trial, however, in May, did not. On May 25th, 1895, Wilde was found guilty of gross indecency and sentenced to 2 years of hard labor, the maximum penalty. He was sent to Reading Gaol, 23 hours a day in solitary confinement, a plank bed, breaking rocks, picking oakum until his fingers bled. His health collapsed. Chronic illness, an ear infection that left him partially deaf. His plays were pulled from the theaters. His name was erased from programs. Constance, his wife, changed her last name and their son's last names to Holland and fled to Europe. She died before he got out. But Wilde kept writing. From prison, he composed De Profundis, a 50,000-word letter to Bosie that was part accusation, part love letter, and part meditation on suffering. "I have got to make everything that has happened to me good for me," he wrote. The plank bed, the loathsome food, the hard ropes shredding into oakum, each and all of these things I have to transform into a spiritual experience. After his release, he wrote The Ballad of Reading Gaol, a poem about a fellow prisoner hanged for murder. Its most famous line, "Yet each man kills the thing he loves." He published it under his cell number, C33, because the name Oscar Wilde had been made toxic. After he was released, he moved to Paris, and in 1900, he died. He was just 46. And the silence that he left behind lasted decades. Men burned letters, underground networks scattered. The green carnation Wilde had popularized as a queer symbol disappeared from lapels. Alan Turing, the man who cracked the Enigma code and helped win World War II, was convicted under the same law in 1952 and chemically castrated. He died by suicide 2 years later. The Labouchere Amendment wasn't repealed until 1967. That was 82 years of destruction from one vaguely worded law. A huge thank you to the members that you see on screen right now. Your support makes this all possible, and it helps me keep digging through archives and sharing the queer history that inspires us. If you'd like to join them, there's a link up above and in the description down below. And if membership isn't in your budget right now, no worries. Subscribing and hitting the bell helps more than you know. Most of all, thank you for being here. So my Mormon grandparents. My grandfather, he passed away without ever really knowing who I was. And Grandma Norma, she got brain cancer, and it was inoperable. It took her fast, about a year after my grandfather. But I was with her near the end in the hospital room, and she was on a lot of morphine, and she was holding onto my hand, and she said, "I love you no matter what. What's most important is that you find love, and you are loved." And I think in that moment, she may have been trying to cross the barrier that we both had created. She was maybe coming out for me. And I can't be sure because she was on a lot of pain medicine, but I would like to think that in that moment, she was breaking down the walls that I had left up. And when I think about my grandparents, that's often what comes up for me. It's that I didn't give them a chance to choose the real me. That my dad's request, I know it came from love and maybe a little bit of fear, but the cost of that silence wasn't just mine. It robbed my grandparents of the chance to figure it out for themselves. I stole their discomfort, or their possible discomfort. That's what silence does. It doesn't just hurt the person that is being silenced. It steals something from everyone around them. But also when I think about my coming out, I also remember that I got my ear pierced around the same time. And more importantly, it was my right ear. And if you grew up in the 80s or the 90s, you know that the right ear meant you were gay. And my old high school friends, they all saw it and they were shooketh. You pierced your ear? And they were all, of course, looking at it, but then referring to my right ear as if I had just sinned, broken every rule. But that piercing, it was such a bold move. And by choosing that, I couldn't hide it. And yeah, I lost some friends because of it, but I stayed true to me. Oscar Wilde couldn't hide either. He stood in an open court and called love between men beautiful and noble. He refused to recant, and then he paid with everything. But he planted a seed, and 130 years later, here we are, telling his story, saying his name, living the lives he fought to imagine. I do want to carve out a little time for Constance, his wife. She was an author, a full-time mother, and she never publicly attacked Oscar through it all. And yes, Oscar was an incredible author, and queer love is a beautiful thing, but dragging another human through such a public and negative scandal without giving them options, I have feelings. I'll have to look into it a little more because, yes, Oscar faced adversity, but what about the woman that was there early on, standing by his side until she couldn't anymore? It's interesting, and I definitely want to look into it. But back to Oscar, and when we look at his choice to not back down and to stand up boldly, you can see how he was brave. And if you have come out, you know what it takes. You knew the consequences, and yet you still did it. And if you're still in the closet, maybe it's because someone who you care about asked you to stay silent, or it's even society's pressures. And I understand that too. And yet, if you take a moment to think about what that silence costs, what it costs you and what it costs everyone around you, the people who love you, they deserve a chance to choose the real you. But coming out is a personal process, and only you know when it's right for you, when it's safe, when it's the time to be bold and stand and let the people around you see the real you. But you also have to know that they may not be ready for it. So again, coming out is totally up to you when you're ready. Okay, I'd love to hear from you. Was there a moment when someone surprised you by choosing love over the rules? And if you want to get some more queer history, you can click this little video popping up right over here. And you can join us and keep the conversation going on the Circle platform using the link up above or down in the description below. Over on Circle, we share more history, we ask questions, we build connection together. Until next time, stay strong, stay bold, and keep making history.